All right, so we have just gone through the glomerulus. All right, we've talked about all the stuff. We've made the filtrate. Now we need to regulate that. I need to maintain a constant flow of fluid, flow of blood, right, into that glomerulus. I need to keep this constant because I need to make filtrate. Why is controlling, regulating flow into the glomerulus important? Well, I need to maintain a constant blood pressure. Okay, that's a major control. We're going to both do this intrinsically and extrinsically because we have two mechanisms of control for this thing. Those that happen inside the kidney, intrinsic controls or renal autoregulation, and extrinsic control, stuff that happens outside of the kidney. And what's outside of the kidney? Hormones. Okay, nervous system too, yes, but all of this is nervous system in the grand scheme of things. But hormones. We're going to have several different hormones that are enacting, secreted from from other locations that enact some kind of control on the kidneys to regulate glomerular filtration. When I say blood pressure, blood volume, right? Because blood volume equals blood pressure. So, regulating how much fluid comes into that glomerulus will dictate the amount of blood volume that we retain, that we lose through urine. Excuse me. The other important thing is to maintain a constant glomerular filtration rate. Okay, that's important. You need to maintain a constant level of this. If it drops excessively too low, the kidneys are just not functioning very well. So we want to be able to maintain these two things. So from an intrinsic view, from what's happening inside the kidney itself, we have two different responses, two different mechanisms, sorry. Myogenic response and tubular glomerular feedback mechanism. Now, the first one seems pretty obvious. It's myo is muscle. So let's look at that one first. For with the regulation of glomerular filtration in terms of the myogenic response, we are either vasoconstricting or vasodilating the smooth muscle of the afferent arteriole. Okay. Remember, efferent arteriole is smaller already. Afferent arteriole is bigger. We have more fluid coming in that connects it. So that creates a pressure. All right. So the only thing we're really going to affect here is going to be that afferent arteriole, predominantly. So let's look at the example here. In the example, we have a decreased blood pressure, so there's less stretch on the blood vessel wall. Remember, there's fluid filling that wall and has a constant pressure. It has a constant firing of action potential to the brain that we help to figure this out. Well, here to these cells within the kidney. When the blood pressure starts to drop, there's less stretch on the wall. Okay. Now it's not touching it. All right. There's less stress on the wall. And it senses that. We don't vasoconstrict. If we vasoconstrict, that's going to cut off even more flow. If I'm having a decreased blood pressure, I'm already having a drop in blood volume. Okay. So I don't want to vasoconstrict because if I vasoconstrict, which is what you would intuitively think, like, right? I mean, because capillaries or blood vessels out in the systemic circulation, that's what we did to pick it back up. We don't do that here. Okay. Because if we do that, then we drop it even more, the glomerular filtration rate. So here we're going to actually dilate that blood vessel, that afferent arteriole. This is going to allow more blood to flow into it. This helps to maintain a normal glomerular filtration rate, this vasodilation here. If we have increased blood pressure, there's more stretch on that arterial wall. This causes those smooth muscles within that afferent arteriole to constrict. And that limits the blood into there. Because if it's stretched, that means there's greater blood volume. So there's more blood volume going into this thing. All right. So the kidneys will compensate to vasoconstrict to narrow, as it says here, that arteriole to limit the amount of blood flow into that glomerulus and therefore balance out that glomerular filtration rate, bringing it back down to normal. Okay, so the myogenic response, smooth muscle is affected of the afferent arteriole. If it's decreased in blood pressure, decrease in blood volume, the response is to relax, open up even more to bring more fluid in to pick up GFR. Okay, and this is what's compensating for a lower system pressure. And the opposite is true for high blood pressure. Okay, it's going to vasoconstrict to limit the amount of fluid coming in, thus getting GFR back to normal. The tubuloglomerular feedback mechanism is basically a backup. Okay, is basically a backup because myogenic response usually doesn't. But if the myogenic response cannot compensate for high blood pressure, tubuloglomerular feedback. If glomerular blood pressure is increased, glomerular pressure increased, there is going to be greater amount of salt in that tubular fluid. Okay, it just makes sense. Higher blood pressure, higher blood volume, more salts, more NaCl. This is detected by those macula densa cells in the juxtaglomerular apparatus. This will cause even further vasoconstriction of that afferent arteriole. Again, to limit that blood flow in. Okay. Just like back here. Okay. Just like back here, it limits the amount of blood flow in. Okay. What's normal? 80 to 180 is normal. Okay. That normal glomerular pressure is 80 to 180. That's that mean normal pressure that we try to maintain. Anything below 80, and we're going to vasodilate. If it's, as you can see, excessively low, then we stop eliminating waste in urine. It's not a good situation. If we have an increase in blood pressure above 180 millimeters of mercury, the arterioles are at maximum vasoconstriction. We get an increase in glomerular blood pressure and an increase in glomerular filtration rate. If it's excessive, then urine formation increases drastically. Crazy. All right, so to sum, back it up. Tubuloglomerular feedback mechanism, okay, is the backup system, all right, where myogenic is responding to a change in basically blood pressure. This one is responding to, well, it's responding to the same thing, but this is more due to sodium chloride to be specifically, all right? If we have an excessive amount of sodium chloride within the system, the macula densa cells are sensing that. They are pumping in NaCl, which pumps across that the juxtaglomerular apparatus, which then enters into the afferent arteriole, which then is just going to enter into the glomerulus. If that happens, the more sodium chloride that's in, the more sodium chloride will have to be pumped out, urinated out. So if we increase the NaCl within the afferent arteriole, we increase the amount going in, and then we increase the amount that has to be secreted out. And so we increase urine dramatically. It's a 1-to-1 ratio, basically. So to slow that down and prevent that excessive water loss that would occur with constant sodium chloride bombardment, we vasoconstrict, and it vasoconstricts the afferent arteriole. The afferent arteriole, the cells along there sense that increase. It's a secondary pathway system that it senses, prevents renin secretion, which, again, if you have high NaCl within the system already, you already have high blood pressure because there's an excessive amount of blood volume. And this actually inhibits renin secretion, which will inhibit systemic vasoconstriction, increasing blood pressure even more. So the tubular glomerular feedback mechanism helps to reduce glomerular filtration rate when you have high NaCl within the system. This helps to limit the amount of fluid loss. And that's only bad because you're going to have a constant filtration rate going on. For as much NaCl comes in, you're going to have as much filtration occurring, all right? So we don't want that. So this causes further vasoconstriction to inhibit that phenomenon. What about extrinsic? Extrinsic comes from outside. So I had myogenic and tubular glomerular inside the cell or inside the kidney, there in the nephron. Extrinsic controls can happen as well. This involves, there it is, there's the nervous system, right? We can affect glomerular filtration rate by affecting sympathetic stimulation. We can also have it be affected by a secretion of ANP as well, which I believe I have on the next slide. This is coming from outside of the kidney. This is coming from outside the kidney. This is coming from outside the kidney. All right. So with this one, let's just say during exercise, right? During exercise, we get a drastic change in pressures within the body, right? During exercise or some kind of emergency situation, we get a dramatic decrease in glomerular filtration. What have we done with exercise? Let's just look at exercise. We are shuttling blood to muscles. So we are changing the vasoconstriction of all the blood vessels, right? On the venous side, to pump more blood over to the arterial side, and the arterial side, it will shift blood to where it's needed. And if you're exercising, you need it in your muscles. So that means less blood going to the kidneys. So there's your decrease in glomerular filtration. Okay. Vasoconstriction of the afferent and efferent arterioles are going to occur here. Granular cells of the juxtaglomerular apparatus release renin, and that gives me a contraction of those mesangial cells. And that helps to decrease the surface area of the glomerulus. Sorry. Because we are going to decrease the amount of fluid coming in there, and that is what is decreasing glomerular filtration. Therefore, we conserve our water. We are exercising. We are sweating. Okay. So this is going to decrease my glomerular filtration because I don't have a need to lose it. Okay. I am maintaining a constant glomerular filtration rate for the situation. Okay. I don't want to lose water. I'm already sweating. So if I lose water and try to maintain that previous constant glomerular filtration rate, I'm going to be losing even more water. So I'm going to vasoconstrict to help diminish loss of blood volume and maintain my blood pressure that way. Atrial natriuretic peptide is also another major hormone involved with this. ANP is secreted by the atria of the heart. When there's too much blood coming back, that tells the heart that there's too much blood volume within the system. Okay, so I need to get rid of that excess water. So when that occurs, the cardiac muscle cells within the atria are told to basically secrete this because of that increased blood volume. So I need to increase my loss. I need to increase my glomerular filtration rate. So in this case, I relax that afferent arteriole. Excuse me. This is ultimately going to inhibit renin because I don't need to vasoconstrict. I already have an excessive amount of blood volume within the system. I don't need to constrict and increase blood pressure even more. Okay. And in this case, where we had contraction of mesangial cells to help diminish GFR, here I'm going to cause relaxation of those mesangial cells. And those mesangial cells are going to vasodilate. And with vasodilation, increase flow of blood into the glomerulus, and I can increase my glomerular filtration rate. If I increase my glomerular filtration rate, I can increase the amount of urine formed, and I can decrease blood volume and blood pressure. I hope that's a hell of a lot more simpler than respiratory system.